The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. I first picked up this book during one of the most restless phases of my life, when money, success, and the future kept me awake at night. Life felt like a storm of stress, anxiety, and endless overthinking. No matter how hard I worked, I felt stuck, chasing something I couldn't quite grasp. I thought the answers were hidden in complex formulas or secret strategies. But this book felt different. It wasn't about numbers. It was about me, about how fear, greed, insecurity, and even optimism shape the way we handle money. Every page was like a mirror reflecting my own thoughts, and slowly I realized, wealth isn't built on brilliance. It's built on behavior. This book didn't just give me financial lessons. It gave me peace of mind, patience, and a new way of looking at money and life. And here's the truth. It's not just my story, it's all of ours. We've all felt the stress of chasing money, the fear of losing it, or the confusion of what to do with it. This book shines a light on those struggles and shows how simple, timeless behaviors, like patience, humility, and emotional control, can transform the way we deal with money and with life. Introducing the greatest show on earth. During college, Morgan worked as a valet at a hotel in Los Angeles. One frequent guest was a technology executive, a genius who had designed a key Wi-Fi component in his 20s, started and sold multiple companies, and achieved extraordinary success. Yet his relationship with money was chaotic. He carried stacks of $100 bills, bragged openly about his wealth, and once bought $1,000 gold coins just to skip them across the Pacific Ocean with friends, laughing as they flew into the sea. Days later, after shattering a $500 lamp, he casually handed the manager $5,000 to settle the matter. Unsurprisingly, that behavior didn't last. Years later, he went broke. Here's an ironic twist. A janitor named Ronald Reed lived a quiet, frugal life in Vermont. He fixed cars at a gas station and swept floors at a department store for decades. He saved what little he could and invested patiently in blue-chip stocks. Over time, those small savings grew into over $8 million, most of which he left to charity. On the other hand, Richard Fuscone, a Harvard-educated finance executive, had it all: education, connections, and career success. Yet he borrowed heavily to expand a massive mansion and lost nearly everything during the 2008 financial crisis. Patience and prudence allowed Ronald to quietly outshine Richard. The lesson is clear. Financial success isn't about intelligence alone. It's about behavior. How people handle emotions, plan for the long term, and control greed and fear often matters far more than formulas, degrees, or career achievements. This book dives into these soft skills, the psychology of money, through stories, history, and counterintuitive lessons. Each chapter stands alone, yet together they reveal why people make the financial decisions they do, and how anyone, from a janitor to a millionaire, can make better ones. Money touches everyone, confuses most, and reveals more about human behavior than almost anything else. Welcome to the greatest show on earth. Chapter 1. No One's Crazy. Morgan Housel begins with a powerful reminder. Our personal experience with money makes up only a tiny fraction of what has happened in the world, yet it shapes the majority of how we think the world works. That's why people often make financial choices that look irrational from the outside. In reality, no one is crazy. Every decision makes sense when seen through the lens of their own life experiences. Money is not just numbers. It's emotions, memories, and the environment people grow up in. Someone raised in poverty sees risk differently than someone raised in wealth. A person who lived through high inflation thinks about money in ways foreign to someone raised in stable times. Even geography changes perspective. A country that hasn't faced a recession in decades will naturally view the economy differently than one that has. This explains why equally smart people can completely disagree about saving, investing, or risk-taking. As Housel notes, history alone doesn't teach us, because reading about a crisis is never the same as living through it. As investor Michael Batnick said, some lessons have to be experienced before they can be understood. Consider the lottery. Americans spend more on lottery tickets than on movies, music, sports, and books combined, with most of that spending coming from the poor. At first glance, it looks reckless, but for someone stuck in a cycle of low wages and no savings, that ticket isn't just gambling. It's a brief moment of hope. And there's another reason money choices seem messy: the system itself. is still new. Retirement accounts, index funds, credit cards, these are only a few decades old. Compared to thousands of years of farming or trade, modern finance is still in its infancy. No wonder so many are figuring it out as they go. So, next time someone makes a financial choice that seems reckless, remember, in their story, it probably makes perfect sense. No one is crazy. We're all learning, carrying the lessons of our own lives into a financial world that is still very young. Chapter 2. Luck and Risk. We like to believe success comes from effort, that people rise because they work harder, smarter, or longer. And sometimes that's true. But there's another side to the story that we don't talk about enough: luck. And its twin sibling, risk. They shape our lives quietly, often before we ever act. As Scott Galloway said, nothing is as good or as bad as it seems. Take Bill Gates. We know him as the co-founder of Microsoft, a tech visionary. But part of his story is timing. In 1968, he happened to attend one of the only high schools in the world with a computer. Out of millions of students worldwide, Gates was among a tiny fraction with that rare access. His obsession and effort mattered, but so did that 1 in a million shot. Even Gates admitted, if there had been no Lakeside, there would have been no Microsoft. Yet luck cuts both ways. At the same school, Gates had a best friend, Kent Evans, just as brilliant, just as driven, equally obsessed with computers. They dreamed of building a future together. But Kent died young in a tragic accident. Same school, same passion, same odds, but opposite outcomes. Gates caught extraordinary luck, while Kent was struck by extraordinary risk. And that's the point. Luck and risk are the invisible threads in every story. They don't ask permission, and they don't care how smart or determined you are. Sometimes people make brilliant choices and still lose. Sometimes reckless decisions succeed. History is full of examples. Cornelius Vanderbilt broke laws to build his railroad empire, and won. The same kind of risk-taking later destroyed Enron. Benjamin Graham, the father of value investing, earned his biggest return from betting almost everything on Geico, contradicting his own rules on diversification. Was it skill or just luck? Even he admitted it's impossible to separate the two. That's why Morgan Housel warns us to be cautious, not just about who we admire, but about the stories we believe. The more extreme the success or failure, the bigger the role of luck or risk. Copying someone else's path may not help you because their path isn't yours. The real lessons come from patterns, principles that show up again and again across different people and situations. Housel shared this in a letter to his son. Some people are born into families that value education, others are not. Some are born into flourishing economies, others into war or poverty. I want you to be successful, and I want you to earn it. But realize not all success is due to hard work, and not all poverty is due to laziness. Keep this in mind when judging others and yourself. That message is powerful, because humility isn't just kindness, it's survival in a world partly ruled by chance. Bill Gates himself once said, "Success is a lousy teacher. It seduces smart people into thinking they can't lose." Failure, on the other hand, can trick people into thinking they were foolish, when really, they were just on the wrong side of risk. So the goal is not to avoid failure entirely. That's impossible. The real goal is to fail safely, to make sure no single mistake is big enough to take you out of the game. Because as long as you can stay in the game, you give luck more chances to work in your favor. Keep yourself in play long enough, and eventually the odds tilt toward you. That's how wealth is built, how resilience is formed, and how real success is earned. Not by avoiding risk altogether, but by surviving it. In the end, nothing is ever as good or as bad as it seems. Chapter 3. Never Enough, When Rich People Do Crazy Things. John Bogle, founder of Vanguard, once shared a story that captures the essence of money in one word. At a party thrown by a billionaire, writer Kurt Vonnegut turned to his friend Joseph Heller and said, "The host made more money yesterday than you've earned from Catch-22 in your entire life." Heller replied, "Yes, but I have something he will never have: enough." That single word, enough, hits hard, because for many, including some of the richest people alive, there seems to be no finish line. No limit to what enough really means. Take Rajat Gupta. Orphaned as a teenager, he rose from almost nothing to the top. CEO of McKinsey, board member of Goldman Sachs, philanthropist alongside Bill Gates, worth $100 million. He had everything, yet it wasn't enough. Surrounded by billionaires, he got insider information and shared it, leading to a massive windfall for a friend and ultimately prison for both. One moment of chasing a little more erased a lifetime of achievement. Or consider Bernie Madoff. Before his infamous Ponzi scheme, he was already extremely wealthy and respected. But he couldn't stop, building a multi-billion-dollar fraud that destroyed lives and his own name. Wealth and reputation didn't satisfy him because he never defined enough. This isn't limited to criminals. Long-term capital management, a hedge fund of brilliant traders, personally wealthy and invested, still sought more. They took huge risks and lost everything. As Warren Buffett said, to make money they didn't have and didn't need, they risked what they did have and did need. That's foolish. So what lessons can we learn from these stories, especially if you ever find yourself with more than enough? First, the hardest financial skill is getting the goalpost to stop moving. Expectations can grow faster than results. Chasing wealth becomes chasing shadows, pushing you to take ever bigger risks. Second, social comparison is the real enemy. A rookie baseball player making $500,000 is rich until he compares himself to Mike Trout, who compares himself to hedge fund managers, who compare themselves to billionaires. The ceiling keeps rising, and no one wins unless they choose not to play. As a Vegas dealer said, the only way to win is to exit as soon as you enter. The same is true for wealth comparison. Third, enough is not settling. It's sanity. A never-ending appetite for more often ends in regret. Unlike overeating, money doesn't give a warning. It just piles up until something breaks. Fourth, there are things money can never replace. Reputation, freedom, family, health, peace of mind, love. These are priceless. No wealth is worth losing them. After prison, Rajat Gupta said, "Don't get too attached to anything. Your reputation, your accomplishments, what does it matter?" But the real lesson isn't in loss. It's in knowing what matters before it's gone. The most powerful financial strategy in the world is simple. Learn to say, I have enough. Chapter 4, Confounding. Compounding. $81.5 billion of Warren Buffett's $84.5 billion net worth came after his 65th birthday. Most of us can't even imagine numbers like that, and that's exactly the point. Time, patience, and consistency can create results so extreme they seem absurd. Sometimes the most important lessons about money don't come from finance at all. They come from things like geology and snow. 1 billion years ago, Earth experienced repeated ice ages. Massive ice sheets would appear, then disappear, only to return again. Scientists spent decades searching for the cause. You might expect something enormous, volcanoes, shifting continents, but the answer was tiny. A small tilt in Earth's orbit, barely noticeable, that changed sunlight just enough. At first, nothing happened. But one summer wasn't warm enough to melt all the snow from winter. That thin layer lingered, making it easier for the next winter's snow to accumulate. Slowly, imperceptibly, the snow piled up. More snow reflected more sunlight, lowering temperatures further. And before long, what began as a tiny change became unstoppable, ice miles thick. One scientist put it perfectly. It is not necessarily the amount of snow that causes ice sheets, but the fact that snow, however little, lasts. That's compounding. Small, consistent actions repeated over time create massive results. And money works the same way. Take Warren Buffett. His genius isn't just in picking stocks, it's in how long he's been investing. Today, his net worth exceeds $84.5 billion, and astonishingly, $81.5 billion of that came after his 65th birthday. If he had started at 30 and stopped at 60, even with the same returns, he'd have only around $12 million. Buffett's secret weapon wasn't brilliance, it was time. Compare that to Jim Simons, who compounds at an extraordinary 66% annually. He started late at 50. Even with higher returns, he hasn't had enough time for compounding to work its full magic. The lesson? Compounding rewards endurance, not just intelligence. Technology shows this too. IBM's 1950s hard drive stored 3.5 megabytes. By 1990, home PCs had a few hundred megabytes. Today, we have drives exceeding 100 terabytes. From 1950 to 1990, growth was slow. From 1990 to now, it exploded. Compounding is subtle at first, then unstoppable. The lesson for money is clear. People chase big returns, 40%, 80% a year, but huge gains rarely last. True wealth is built by earning good returns consistently for as long as possible. Compounding doesn't reward brilliance, it rewards patience, endurance, and consistency. If anyone wrote the ultimate investing book, it wouldn't be flashy. It would be one page, shut up and wait, with a long-term chart. That's the real magic. Compounding doesn't care how smart you are or how much you start with. It just needs you to stay consistent and let time do the work. That's when subtle change becomes unstoppable, and wealth, like ice sheets, turns from improbable to inevitable. Chapter 5. Getting wealthy versus staying wealthy. Good investing is not necessarily about making good decisions. It's about consistently not screwing up. Jesse Livermore and Abraham Germansky lived in the same era, both legends, but their endings couldn't have been more different. Livermore? A trading genius. By 30, he was worth $100 million in today's terms. During the 1929 crash, while the world panicked, he made the modern equivalent of $3 billion in a single day by betting against the market. On the same day, Abraham Germansky, a successful New York real estate developer who had bet heavily on rising stocks, vanished into the streets of Manhattan. The ticker tape in his hands fluttered to the ground, and no one ever saw him again. Two men, one event, two drastically different outcomes. But the story doesn't end there. Just 4 years later, Livermore lost it all. He placed bigger, riskier bets, fueled by confidence, maybe even arrogance. Debt piled up, and ultimately, he took his own life. The lesson, Morgan Housel says, is clear. Getting money and keeping money are two completely different skills. Even if you're not rich, this applies to everyone. Getting money takes boldness. It means risk, optimism, and stepping into the unknown. Keeping money? That requires humility, caution, and a constant awareness that luck played a role in your success, and it might not show up again. Michael Moritz, billionaire investor at Sequoia Capital, explained why his firm lasted decades while others fizzled out. We've always been afraid of going out of business. Not confidence, not vision, fear. Survival, above all else, is what keeps you in the game. In fact, if you had to sum up financial success in one word, it would be survival. The reality is stark. 40% of public companies eventually lose all their value. The Forbes 400 experiences about 20% turnover per decade. That's not due to death or inheritance. Capitalism is brutal. To win, you must stay in the game, and that means avoiding ruin. Consider Rick Guerin, the often forgotten third member of Buffett and Munger's original trio. In the 1970s, all three invested together. But while Buffett and Munger took the long view, Rick wanted to get rich fast. During the 1973 to 1974 market crash, Rick's margin bets forced him to sell, losing his position. Buffett said, "I bought Rick's Berkshire stock for under $40 a share." Same brains, same opportunity. But Rick vanished from the spotlight. Buffett explained, "Charlie and I knew we'd become incredibly wealthy. We weren't in a hurry. Rick was just as smart, but he was in a hurry." Hurry and impatience with money lead to mistakes. Nassim Taleb puts it simply, having an edge and surviving are two different things. The first requires the second. You must avoid ruin at all costs. The survival mindset in action. Be financially unbreakable. Holding cash during a bull market may feel silly. Everyone else is making 10% while you earn 1%. But if that 1% cushion prevents panic selling during a crash, it's the best return you'll ever earn. Staying unbroken matters more than chasing the highest returns. Plan for plans to fail. You plan, God laughs. Over the last 20 years, the world has thrown us 9/11, housing collapse, global financial crisis, a pandemic, wild, unpredictable stock market rebounds. Don't just make a plan for when your plan fails. Chapter 6. Tails, you win. You can be wrong half the time and still make a fortune. Let's talk about something often overlooked, the power of tail events. In investing, business, even life, a few rare events account for most outcomes. They're called tails, the unpredictable, game-changing events that carry almost all the weight. Take Walt Disney. In the mid-1930s, he had already made hundreds of cartoons. Most were short, beloved, but financial flops. Then came Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. In just 6 months of 1938, it earned $8 million, more than everything Disney had made before. Debts were wiped out, employee bonuses paid, and a state-of-the-art studio built in Burbank. One tail event transformed Disney from animator to legend. This pattern repeats everywhere. Venture capital is a perfect example. 65% of 21,000 startups funded between 2004 to 2014 lost money. Just 0.5% returned 50x or more. And that tiny slice drove most of the industry's gains. Public stock markets? Similar story. 40% of companies in the Russell 3000 lost at least 70% of their value permanently. Yet the market itself has grown 73-fold since 1980. Only 7% of companies accounted for nearly all the gains. Tail events are like the top 1% of people driving most conversations, the handful of movies earning billions, or the one song defining a decade. Rare, but decisive. Even in personal investing, it's true. Warren Buffett attributes most of his wealth to roughly 10 investments out of 400 to 500 stocks. Charlie Munger adds, if you remove just a few of Berkshire's top investments, its long-term track record is pretty average. Netflix CEO Reed Hastings understood the same principle. Our hit ratio is way too high. We need to cancel more shows. Jeff Bezos treated the Fire Phone as a flop, but Prime and AWS more than made up for it. Tail wins outweigh failures. The same is true in creativity. Chris Rock performs dozens of club shows, tests material, bombs often, before discovering the few jokes that truly land. The key lesson: you don't have to be right all the time. You just need to be right big a few times. You can be wrong half the time and still make a fortune. George Soros put it perfectly. It's not whether you're right or wrong that matters. It's how much money you make when you're right and how much you lose when you're wrong. In investing, what matters most isn't your daily moves. It's the few days when everyone else panics. Tail events dominate outcomes. They're everywhere. The one job that launched your career. The one property that made you rich. The one decision that changed everything. If you expect every step to be a winner, you'll be crushed by failures. But if you anticipate small losses and patiently wait for the big hits, you'll survive and maybe even thrive. Remember, tails drive everything. Rare, powerful, real. You don't need to win all the time, just some of the time, and big. Chapter 7. Freedom. Controlling your time is the highest dividend money pays. What's the highest form of wealth? It isn't money. It isn't cars, houses, or fame. It's control over your time. Daniel Kahneman, Nobel Prize-winning psychologist, observed that beyond a certain point, more money doesn't make us happier. What does? The ability to do what you want, when you want, with who you want, for as long as you want. That's freedom. Think about it. You could earn a high salary but have no time for your kids, no energy for your passions. Are you truly wealthy? Now compare that to a teacher, not rich by Wall Street standards, but with long summers, free evenings, and weekends to spend as she pleases. Who is wealthier in terms of life quality? Here's a paradox. Many chase wealth for status, bigger houses, fancier cars, but overlook what money can truly buy: independence. Consider Derek Sivers. In 2008, he sold CD Baby for $22 million. Most would imagine yachts, mansions, luxury galore. Instead, he put the money in a trust and gave himself a modest salary. His reason? I don't want to be rich. I just want to be free. Morgan Housel captures this perfectly. The richest person is the one who wakes up and can say, I can do whatever I want today. This doesn't mean quitting work altogether. For many, work is meaningful. The difference is choosing to work, not being forced to. Warren Buffett, for example, still works daily at 90, not for the money, but because he loves the game. That's real freedom. The takeaway: wealth isn't about flashy displays. It's about flexibility. It's about reclaiming your time. The ultimate dividend of money isn't stuff, it's independence. Chapter 8, The Man in the Car Paradox. No one is impressed with your possessions as much as you are. Picture this: a stranger pulls up in a flashy sports car. You think, wow, what a car. But here's the paradox. You're not admiring the driver. You're imagining yourself in that car. That's the man in the car paradox. The owner buys it expecting admiration, but most people don't even notice. They just project themselves into the scene. Morgan Housel sums it up. No one is as impressed with your possessions as you are. Yet people trade freedom, savings, and peace of mind for luxury, thinking it earns respect. Real admiration comes from who you are, not what you own, your character, generosity, and how you make others feel. The lesson: we buy things to impress others, but really, we only impress ourselves. Stop chasing approval. Focus on what truly matters. In the end, the only person you need to impress is yourself. Chapter 9. Wealth is what you don't see. Spending money to show people how much you have is the fastest way to have less. Wealth isn't flashy cars, designer clothes, or Instagram vacations. Those are spending. Wealth is invisible. Money quietly compounding in accounts and investments, building a financial cushion you never broadcast. Morgan Housel puts it simply: spending money to show people how much money you have is the fastest way to have less money. Think of it. When someone drives a luxury car, admiration goes to the imagined version of yourself, not the owner. Consider Ronald Reed, the janitor who died with $8 million. He drove a secondhand car, wore the same flannel shirt, and no one ever saw his wealth. Meanwhile, many millionaires spend as fast as they earn, looking rich, but often one crisis away from broke. The key distinction: rich is visible, wealth is hidden. Every dollar you don't spend is a choice for future freedom, security, and options. Would you rather look rich today or be wealthy tomorrow? True wealth is patient, quiet, and invisible. Cars rust, clothes go out of style, houses need repairs, but money saved and invested buys time, freedom, and peace of mind. Wealth is what you don't see. Chapter 10. Save money. The only factor you can control generates one of the few things that truly matters. How wonderful. Here's a truth about money. You don't need genius IQ, perfect investments, or insider access to build wealth. What you really need is the ability to save. Saving is the gap between your ego and your income. It's not about how much you earn, it's about how much you don't spend. Morgan Housel reminds us, wealth is just the accumulated leftovers after you spend less than you make. Simple, right? But the real challenge is psychological. Most people raise their lifestyle with every raise: bigger car, bigger house, fancier vacations. And yet, some janitors die millionaires while many doctors go broke. The difference isn't knowledge, it's behavior. Ronald Reed, the janitor we met earlier, saved diligently and invested patiently. Millions later, his wealth was quiet, invisible, unstoppable. Meanwhile, high earners often fail because they never mastered saving. You don't need a specific reason to save. Not retirement, college, or a new house. Life is unpredictable. Savings give options. They let you leave a toxic job, handle emergencies, or take time off for your kids. Housel calls it, savings without a spending goal gives you options and flexibility, the ability to wait and the opportunity to pounce. It gives you time to think. It lets you change your mind. Think of savings like oxygen, invisible when you have it, but impossible to ignore when you don't. Key takeaways. Don't wait for a higher income. Start saving now. Focus on your savings rate, not just investment returns. Spending flexes ego. Saving builds wealth. Saving isn't just about money. It's about freedom, resilience, and peace of mind. Save not for what you want today, but for the life you'll want tomorrow. Chapter 11. Reasonable. Rational. Aiming to be mostly reasonable works better than trying to be coldly rational. We're often told to be rational, purely logical, mathematical, and unemotional. But we're not robots. Morgan Housel argues it's far better to be reasonable than perfectly rational. Imagine this. A finance professor says, invest 100% in stocks for the long run. It's mathematically optimal. But could you sleep at night watching your portfolio drop 50%? Probably not. A rational strategy you can't follow is worse than a reasonable one you can. Take mortgages. Mathematically, you might maximize returns by investing every spare dollar instead of paying off a low-interest loan. Yet many pay it off early. Why? Owning their home free and clear feels safe. Not perfectly rational, but deeply reasonable. And over time, a strategy you stick with beats one you abandon. Finance decisions aren't made in spreadsheets. They're made at the dinner table, in moments of fear or joy, in conversations with family. Retirement is another example. Waiting until 70 may maximize Social Security, but retiring earlier might give more years of health and freedom with loved ones. Not optimal on paper, but perfectly reasonable in life. Even legendary investors follow this principle. Charlie Munger said, "The goal is not to be smarter than the other guy, it's to be more disciplined than the other guy." Discipline is reasonable. Discipline is sustainable. Takeaways. Don't chase perfect models or flawless logic. Build a plan you can live with in good times and bad. A reasonable plan you stick to beats a rational plan you abandon. At the end of the day, money isn't about squeezing out every last percentage point. It's about living comfortably and sleeping well at night. Chapter 12. Surprise. History is the study of change, ironically used as a map of the future. Here's one thing we can guarantee about the future. It will surprise you. Morgan Housel puts it simply. History is the study of surprises. The future will be the same. Think back a little. In the 1990s, hardly anyone imagined the internet would dominate every corner of our lives. In 2007, few predicted a housing bubble that nearly collapsed the global economy. In 2019, almost nobody saw a pandemic shutting down the world. Experts had models, forecasts, and endless charts. Reality had surprises. Why? The biggest forces shaping the world are always things we don't see coming. In investing, no spreadsheet, backtest, or projection can fully capture the unknown. A single unexpected event, war, pandemic, technology breakthrough, political shift, can rewrite everything. And here's the kicker. The surprises often matter most. 401ks didn't exist before 1978. Now they're central to retirement planning. The iPhone, launched in 2007, reshaped global business, culture, and habits. Interest rates, inflation, recessions, they swing wildly and rarely as expected. The lesson? Approach money with humility. Admit, I don't know what the future will look like, and that's okay. Build strategies that can withstand shocks. Save more than you think you'll need. Leave room for error in your plans. Don't bet everything on one forecast being right. The only certainty is uncertainty. As Housel says, the most important events in history are the big outliers, the unexpected ones. It's true in personal life too. The job that changed your career, the person who altered your path, the crisis that forced you to grow, most were surprises. Don't obsess over predicting the future. You'll fail. Focus on preparing for it, because the future will surprise us all. The only question is, will you be ready when it does? Chapter 13. Room for error. The most important part of every plan is planning on your plan not going according to plan. Morgan Housel. That line says it all. When it comes to money, the biggest mistake people make is assuming the future will behave exactly as expected. The truth? The world always finds a way to humble us. So what do? You build in room for error. Think of it like this. Airplanes don't take off with just enough fuel to reach their destination. They load up with reserves. Delays, storms, diversions happen. Investing and life work the same way. Saving for retirement, don't assume 10% returns every year. What if it's 5%? Running a business, don't assume sales will always rise. What if they drop? Personal budget, don't spend every rupee. What if an emergency hits? That cushion, your margin of safety, is the difference between surviving and sinking. Warren Buffett puts it perfectly. You only find out who is swimming naked when the tide goes out. A margin of safety isn't pessimism, it's realism. It acknowledges that the world is uncertain, mistakes happen, and risks hide in the shadows. Consider Microsoft. Bill Gates insisted the company keep enough cash to run for a year with zero revenue. Rational on a spreadsheet? Maybe not. Reasonable? Absolutely. And it kept Microsoft alive while competitors faltered. The best investors aren't those who make the boldest bets. They're the ones who can stay in the game longest. Staying in the game requires room for error. Morgan Housel sums it up. The more you need specific elements of a plan to work, the more fragile your financial life becomes. Takeaways. Save more than you think you need. Invest with humility, not arrogance. Expect surprises, and design your life to survive them. Wealth isn't about getting everything right. It's about being able to withstand being wrong. Room for error isn't wasted space. It's the oxygen that lets you breathe when everyone else is suffocating. Chapter 14. You'll change. Long-term planning is harder than it seems because people's goals and desires change over time. Morgan Housel. Think about this. How many of your dreams at 18 are still your dreams today? Probably not many. That's the point. You'll change. Your financial goals, definition of success, even your idea of happiness will evolve. At 20, you might crave adventure, travel, and risk. At 40, maybe stability, family, and security. At 60, freedom, health, and peace of mind. This isn't weakness. It's human nature. The danger is locking yourself into a rigid plan as if today's desires will last forever. Housel puts it plainly. The illusion of permanence, that what we want today is what we'll always want, leads us to overcommit to future goals that won't matter when we arrive there. Think of people chasing massive houses, only to find them a burden, or grinding for decades in high-paying jobs, and only to realize what they wanted most was time, not money. Even investors fall into this trap, holding stocks forever, then life changes and the strategy no longer fits. The solution? Build flexibility into your financial life. Focus on resilience. Anchor your money on timeless truths, not temporary wants. Jeff Bezos sums it up. Make decisions based on what won't change, like customers always wanting lower prices and faster delivery. Timeless truths for money. Freedom will always matter. Flexibility will always matter. Security will always matter. Takeaway. Don't feel guilty if your goals shift. That's growth, not failure. Regret avoidance is more important than chasing every opportunity. Your future self deserves flexibility. So instead of asking, what do I want in 30 years? Ask, how can I set myself up so that when I change, because I will, I'll still be okay? That's real long-term planning. Chapter 15, Nothing's Free. Everything has a price, but not all prices appear on labels. Morgan Housel. This chapter delivers a truth we often forget. Nothing in finance or life comes free. Buying a house, the price is obvious. Investing in stocks, the price isn't dollars, it's volatility, crashes, sleepless nights, gut-wrenching headlines that make you question if your savings just vanished. The mistake most people make is wanting the rewards of investing without paying the price of volatility. That's like wanting to run a marathon without sweating. It doesn't work. Housel explains it clearly. The volatility fee is the cost of admission to get the returns that make stocks so great over the long run. Look at history. From 1900 to today, U.S. stocks returned 6 to 7% annually after inflation. Incredible wealth creation. But along the way, investors endured the Great Depression, 2 world wars, the dot-com crash, the 2008 financial crisis, dozens of smaller meltdowns. The reward was long-term growth. The price was short-term pain. And this truth extends beyond investing. A great career? Years of rejection, stress, and grind. A strong body? Sweat, discipline, and sacrifice. Financial independence? Saving when everyone else is spending. The tragedy is when people see volatility as a fine to avoid rather than a fee worth paying. That mindset drives panic selling at the worst possible time. The better question isn't, how do I avoid the price? But, am I willing to pay it? Because every asset, every opportunity has a cost. The trick is recognizing it, accepting it, and still moving forward. Next time the market drops and fear takes over, remember, that's not a punishment. It's the toll booth on the road to wealth. Nothing's free, but if you're willing to pay the price, the rewards can change your life. Chapter 16, You and Me. Beware taking financial cues from people playing a different game than you are. Morgan Housel. The dot-com bubble erased trillions. The housing crash that followed wiped out even more. These weren't just numbers. They were broken families, lost jobs, and shattered dreams. So why do bubbles keep happening? It's not just greed. As Housel said back in Chapter 1, no one is crazy. People act in ways that make sense for the game they're playing, even if it looks reckless to others. Here's the key. Bubbles form when investors copy people who are playing different games. For a long-term investor, the right price of a stock is about decades of growth. For a retiree, it's about the next 10 years. For a day trader, it's just today's moves. When all these players collide, prices swing wildly. Think of Yahoo in 1999. At insane valuations, it looked ridiculous for long-term investors. But for traders flipping it daily, Yahoo was perfect. The same happened in housing. Families saw overpriced homes, while flippers only saw quick profits. And here's where the danger grows. When long-term investors start copying short-term players, disaster follows. Cisco in 1999 is the classic case, worth $600 billion on paper, as if it could outgrow the US economy. It made sense for day traders chasing quick wins, but it crushed those holding for decades. Housel puts it best. Few things matter more with money than understanding your own time horizon and not being persuaded by the actions of people playing different games than you are. And it's not just markets. We copy careers, spending, and lifestyles without realizing those choices make sense only in someone else's game. So define your game. Write it down. For Housel, it's this. I am a passive investor, optimistic about long-term growth, and confident it will accrue to my portfolio over 30 years. Once you know your game, you can tune out the noise. Crashes, hype, headlines. They belong to games you're not playing. Understand your horizon. Play your own game. That's the only way to stay sane in a world full of noise. Chapter 17. The Seduction of Pessimism. Optimism sounds like a sales pitch. Pessimism sounds like someone trying to help you. Morgan Housel. That's why pessimism is so powerful. It feels smart, it feels protective, and it always grabs attention. Optimism, on the other hand, often feels naive, even though history shows it usually wins over the long run. Historian Deirdre McCloskey once said, "For reasons I have never understood, people like to hear that the world is going to hell." And it's true. A prediction of collapse makes headlines. A story of steady progress gets ignored. Take the financial crisis in 2008. One expert claimed the US would split into 6 nations. It sounded dramatic, and people listened. Contrast that with Japan in 1946. If someone had predicted the country would soon be rich, innovative, and healthy, they'd be laughed at. Yet, that's what happened. That's the paradox. Pessimism sounds deep, optimism sounds foolish. Matt Ridley put it best: say the world is getting better, and you'll be called naive. Say catastrophe is imminent, and you may win a Genius Award. Why does this happen? Because our brains are wired to fear loss more than celebrate gain. A small market drop screams in red headlines. A rise of the same size barely gets a mention. But here's the key. Pessimists think problems are permanent. They forget that humans adapt. High oil prices sparked fracking. Diseases led to new medicines. Crises create innovation. Progress is slow and quiet, while setbacks are fast and loud. That's why crashes dominate the news, while steady improvements, like heart disease deaths falling 70% in 50 years, barely get noticed. The cost of long-term optimism is living through short-term pessimism. Morgan Housel. So here's the lesson. To build wealth, you must accept volatility, fear, and setbacks. They're simply the price of progress. Stephen Hawking, when asked why he was so cheerful despite illness, said, "My expectations were reduced to 0 when I was 21. Everything since then has been a bonus." That's the balance. Pessimism keeps us cautious. Optimism keeps us moving. Together, they make resilience. The world isn't falling apart, it's just noisy on the way up. Chapter 18. When You'll Believe Anything. Stories are more powerful than statistics. Morgan Housel. Imagine an alien watching Times Square in 2007 and again in 2009. The lights, the crowds, the city, all look the same. Yet the economy is in crisis. Unemployment is up, households are poorer, the stock market halved. The tools and people haven't changed. What changed? The story. Stories shape how we see the world. When the narrative shifts, behavior follows. Spending drops, fear rises, markets tumble. 2 key lessons about stories and money. We believe what we want to be true. People chase stock tips, Ponzi schemes, or get swept up in bubbles because the potential payoff feels life-changing. Even when the odds are tiny, appealing stories can override reality. We fill gaps with stories. We don't know everything, so we create complete narratives from partial facts. Hindsight tricks us into thinking events were predictable. We credit skill, ignore luck, and see patterns that aren't there. Finance is messy, human, and emotional. We crave control, so we tell ourselves comforting stories, even illusions. The alien circling Earth, confident he understands the economy but missing the real story. That alien is all of us. The takeaway: numbers don't move markets, stories do. And the most dangerous lies aren't told by others. They're the ones we tell ourselves. Chapter 19, All Together Now. I can't tell you what to do with your money because I don't know you. Morgan Housel. This chapter ties all the lessons together into a simple pocket guide for your own money. Housel opens with a story. In 1931, Clarence Hughes died from a medical procedure he never consented to. Back then, doctors assumed one cure fit all. Over time, medicine learned to give patients choices. Just like money, there's no universal solution. There are only universal truths. Here are the key truths for handling your money. Respect luck and risk. Things are never as good or bad as they seem. Less ego, more wealth. Every rupee you don't spend buys freedom tomorrow. Sleep easy. The right financial choice is the one that lets you rest at night. Stretch your time horizon. Time turns small wins into fortunes. Be comfortable being wrong. Few winners often outweigh many losers. Use money to control your time. Freedom pays the highest dividend. Be nice, not flashy. Humility matters more than luxury. Just save, not for a goal, but for life's surprises. Nothing's free. Every reward comes with a hidden cost. Leave room for error. Margins of safety keep you in the game. Avoid extremes. Goals and life change. Rigidity risks regret. Like risk, but fear ruin. Risk grows wealth. Ruin ends the game. Play your own game. Don't copy others with different goals and timelines. Respect the mess. There's no single right answer, only what works for you. There is no single path to wealth, only principles that guide your journey. The question isn't what worked for someone else, it's what works for you. What's your game? What's your path? Chapter 20, Confessions, The Psychology of My Own Money. What do you own and why? Sandy Gottesman. Morgan Housel highlights a key truth. Money decisions are personal. Many people recommend strategies they don't follow. Half of U.S. mutual fund managers don't invest in their own funds. Like doctors choosing simpler treatments for themselves, Housel follows what feels right, not just what looks rational on paper. Saving Charlie Munger said, "I did not intend to get rich. I just wanted to be independent." Housel lives by that principle. He lives below his means and saves every raise in an independence fund. He owns his home outright. Psychologically, no mortgage provides freedom and peace of mind. Extra cash is kept for safety, so life's surprises don't force hasty decisions. The first rule of compounding is to never interrupt it unnecessarily. Morgan Housel. Investing Housel moved from picking stocks to mostly low-cost index funds. Simple, patient strategies matter more than beating the market. Save, invest automatically, and let compounding work. His net worth: house, cash, index funds. No complexity, just stability. Good decisions aren't always rational. At some point, you have to choose between being happy or being right. Morgan Housel. For Morgan Housel, happiness equals independence. That's his game. What's yours? Listening is good, but action is better. Here are the 3 most actionable ideas you can start today. 1. Define your own game. Write down your goals, timeline, and risk tolerance. Make spending, saving, and investing decisions based on your priorities, not anyone else's. Check in monthly to stay focused and ignore short-term noise. Why it matters. Knowing your game keeps you calm during market swings and life surprises. 2. Build a margin of safety. Keep 3 to 6 months of expenses in an emergency fund. Diversify your investments. Don't bet everything on one stock. Prepare for surprises so you can act calmly, not react emotionally. Why it matters. Safety cushions let you sleep well and avoid panic decisions. 3. Automate your savings. Open a separate account for your independence fund. Set up automatic transfers from every paycheck. Small amounts grow fast. Let compounding do the heavy lifting quietly without relying on willpower. Why it matters. Automation builds wealth consistently while you focus on life. This book isn't just about getting rich. It's about living life on your terms. Freedom is the real goal. Which idea resonated with you most? Drop a comment, hit like, and don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next video.